Lena Horne, the Demure elegant diva, was a singer, actress, and civil rights activist who first established herself as an accomplished live singer and then transitioned into film work. She signed with MGM Studios and became known as one of the top African-American performers of her time. She achieved international fame and broke new ground for Black performers. She was also known for her work with civil rights groups and refused to play roles that stereotype African-American women, a stance that many found controversial. After some time out of the limelight during the 1970s, she made a revered award-winning comeback with her 1981 show, Lena Horne, the Lady, and Her Music. Lena Horne's talent and contributions was pivotal in transforming the image of Black women in entertainment. Lena Mary Calhoun Horne was born on June 30, 1917 in Brooklyn, New York. She was born into a respectable middle-class family, the daughter of a gambler and actress. Her parents were considered black sheep of the family for not taking the expected roles and professions of the Black bourgeoisie. Edna and Teddy Horne had a mixed heritage of African American, European American, and Native American descent. All four of her grandparents were industrious members of Brooklyn's black middle class. Her paternal grandparents, Edwin and Cora Horne, were early members of the NAACP. Her grandmother, Cora, was a suffragette and an ardent fighter for freedom on all fronts. In October 1919, at the age of 2, Lena was a cover girl for NAACP's monthly bulletin. Her parents separated when she was 3. For years, her mother struggled to become an actress. She left young Lena with her paternal grandmother. 4 years later, she took her back. She alternately accompanied her mother on the road and was shifted and shuttled throughout the South, staying in different homes of friends and relatives. In the one-room schoolhouses in the South, kids made fun of her accent and skin color. Lena was a perpetual outsider, not quite fitting in with the middle class or the poor Black community. When she was 16, her mother pulled her out of school to audition for a dance chorus at the Cotton Club, the famous Harlem nightclub where customers were white, the barely dressed dancers were light-skinned blacks, and the proprietors were gangsters. A year after joining the Cotton Club chorus, she made her Broadway debut performing a voodoo dance in the short-lived show Dance with Your Gods in 1934. She joined Noble Sissle in his orchestra as a singer using the name Helena Horne. Then, after appearing in a Broadway musical review, Lou Leslie's Blackbirds of 1939, she joined a well-known white swing band, the Charlie Barnett Orchestra. Barnett was one of the first band leaders to integrate his band, but because of racial prejudice, Horne was unable to stay or socialize at many of the venues in which the orchestra performed, and she soon left the tour. In 1941, she returned to New York to work at Cafe Society nightclub, popular with both Black and white artists and intellectuals. In between all these activities, at age 19, Lena married the first man she ever dated, 28-year-old Louis Jones, and became a conventional middle-class Pittsburgh wife. Her daughter Gail was born in 1937 and son Teddy in 1940. The marriage ended soon afterward. Miss Horne kept Gail, but Mr. Jones refused to give up Teddy, although he did allow the boy long visits with his mother. She had been singing at the Manhattan nightclub Cafe Society when impresario Felix Young chose her to star at the Trocadero, a nightclub he was planning to open in Hollywood in the fall of 1941. In 1990, Miss Horne reminisced, "My only friends were a group of New Yorkers who sort of stuck to their own group, like Vincent, Gene Kelly, Yip Harburg, Harold Arlen, and Richard Wharf, the sort of hip New Yorkers who allowed Paul Robeson and me in their houses." Since blacks were not allowed to live in Hollywood, Felix Young, a white man, signed for the house as if he was going to rent it, Miss Horne said. When the neighbors found out, Humphrey Bogart, who lived right across the street from me, raised hell with him for passing around a petition to get rid of me. Bogart, she said, sent word over to the house that if anybody bothered me, please let him know. In Los Angeles, she quickly became the West Coast's latest in sensation. MGM spotted her, signed her up, and afterward, Lena formed almost overnight into a national social symbol. The long run at the Savoy Plaza Hotel nightclub in 1943 gave Horne's career a boost. She was featured in Life magazine and became the highest paid black entertainer at the time. After signing a 7-year contract with MGM Studios, civil rights groups took keen interest in her budding movie career. NAACP Executive Secretary Walter White felt that as the first Black woman with a long-term contract at a major Hollywood studio, she could do much to alter the image of Black women in American motion pictures. Everyone was determined not to let the movie capital turn her into another clownish Black maid. The NAACP celebrated her contract as a weapon in its war to get better movie roles for Black performers. Her father weighed in too. Teddy Horne, the gambler, came out to Hollywood, flew out very tailored and dapper, and demanded an interview very politely with Blues B. Mayer, the head of MGM, and said, "I can afford to hire a maid for my daughter. She doesn't need to play a maid." And they were bowled over by this. They'd never seen anything like Teddy Horne or heard anything like that from a Black man who was not political in any way. Well, Hollywood didn't turn her into a housekeeper, but it didn't turn her into Jean Harlow either. At heart, Lena Horne knew she was simply a celebrated token who could be picked up and dropped or used however MGM saw fit. She might have become a major movie star, but she was born 50 years too early. She languished at MGM for years because of her race. In the history of American popular entertainment, no woman had ever looked like Lena Horne, nor had any other Black woman had the looks considered safe and non-threatening. Lena's looks were far more manageable. She wasn't too dark or too light, for she was something of an invisible Black woman who presented no problems. She was urged to change her name and pass as Latin, but she refused. Looking back on the period now, it is obvious that nobody would have ever wanted Lena to be anything other than Lena. Miss Horne was stuffed into one all-star film musical after another to sing a song or two. Thousands a Cheer, 1943, Broadway Rhythm, 1944, Two Girls and a Sailor, 1944, Ziegfeld Follies, 1946, Worlds in Music, 1948. She later recalled, she could easily be snipped from the movie when it played in the South, where the idea of an African-American performer in anything other than a subservient role in a movie with an otherwise all-white cast was unthinkable. The only time I ever said a word to another actor who was white was Katherine Grayson in a little segment of Showboat included in Till the Clouds Roll By, 1946, a movie about the life of Jerome Kern. Miss Horne said in an interview in 1990. In that sequence, she played Julie, a mulatto forced to flee the showboat because she married a white man. Nonetheless, she was able to land lead roles in two 1943 movies with an ensemble African-American cast, Cabin in the Sky and Stormy Weather. Horne's rendition of the title song, Stormy Weather, would become her signature tune, one she would perform countless times over the decades via her live performances. With the exception of Cabin in the Sky and Stormy Weather, her 11 movies of the 40s represented case studies in Hollywood duplicity. Usually she didn't play characters, she just came on as herself, her glamorous nightclub persona, looking terrific, singing her number, then disappearing from the picture. Still, her movies took her fully into the mainstream of American popular culture, making her one of the most famous Black personalities in the country. In 1945, the critic and screenwriter Frank S. Nugent wrote in Liberty magazine that Miss Horne was the nation's top Negro entertainer. In addition to her MGM salary of $1,000 a week, she was earning $1,500 for every radio appearance and $6,500 a week when she played nightclubs. Whether in movies or out back in nightclubs, Lena Horne's style and presence remained fresh and exciting. For a Black star, her material was different, never the blues, spirituals, or jazz. Instead, she performed a kind of sophisticated Cole Porter or Gershwin ballads her audiences and classy cabarets favored. Her voice was smooth and vibrant, and as the years moved on, seemed filled full of tension. But what distinguished her was her intelligence and sophistication. Then there was also the Horne aloofness, which never unnoticed became the hallmark of her style. No one was more aware of the withdrawal than Lena Horne herself, who clearly used it for therapeutic reasons. More than any other diva before her, Lena Horne had grown up in front of white audiences, repeatedly encountering the same slights and indignities every other Black female star knew of. She learned ways to pull back from her white audiences, developing a guile and toughness, using her remoteness, her high-flung inaccessibility as an aggressive protective shield. She also developed a hostility and an edge that often she felt her audiences overlooked because they were too busy seeing their own preconceived image of a Negro woman. The image I chose to give them was of a woman they could not reach. I think this is why I rarely speak to my audience. I am too proud to let them think they can have any personal contact with me. They get the singer, but they're not going to get the woman, she said. The irony is that during the war years, her withdrawal, which alternately puzzled or put audiences off, was accepted nonetheless. Perhaps as a byproduct of the war itself, she became a symbol of the melancholy girl back home, ill at ease and sad because her man was off somewhere in combat. For Black GIs who viewed Stormy Weather and Cabin in the Sky, she was as Rita Hayworth or Betty Grable were for whites, a luscious pinup girl. Even the military was not blind to Lena's special appeal. She was asked to entertain at army camps. She was shocked to find segregated audiences. Often she did not see Black soldiers until the next day after her big performance. When at a performance in Fort Riley, Kansas, she spotted German prisoners of war sitting in the best seats in front of the house. She stepped from the stage, whisked past them, then sang to the Black soldiers in the back. Touring army camps for the USO, Horne was outspoken in her criticism of the way Black soldiers were treated. So the USO got mad, she recalled, and they said, "You're not going to be allowed to go anyplace anymore under our auspice." From then on, I was labeled a bad little red girl. By the late 1940s, Ms. Horne had career problems. MGM having sunk money in an all-Black Broadway show, St. Louis Woman, in which it hoped to star her, and was heartily pleased when she turned down the lead role. She listened to the NAACP and Walter White, who asked her not to do it. They thought it a demeaning role. She would have played a prostitute. Matters were not helped either when in 1947, she married Lenny Hayton, a prominent arranger, conductor, and pianist who, for many years, was both her musical director and MGM's. At the time, interracial marriage was illegal in the US. They married in France and it was kept a secret for 3 years. This was the post-war era's first big interracial romance, and it did not sit well with anyone. In 1951, when the studio remade Showboat, Horne had her heart set on the role of Julie. Instead, the role was given to her good friend Ava Gardner, a white actress whose singing voice was dubbed. Lena was no longer under contract to MGM at the time, and according to James Gavin Horne's biography, Stormy Weather, she was never seriously considered for the part. By the end of the 1940s, Horne had sued a variety of restaurants and theaters for discrimination and became an outspoken member of the leftist group Progressive Citizens of America. McCarthyism was sweeping through Hollywood, and Horne soon found herself blacklisted, appearing in the Red Channels, a compilation of entertainers believed to be either communist or communist sympathizers. Lena Horne was neither. She was believed to be blacklisted due in part to her friendship with actor Paul Robeson, who was also blacklisted. She still performed primarily in posh nightclubs around the country as well as Europe, and was also able to make some TV appearances. The ban had eased by the mid-1950s, and Horne returned to the screen in the 1956 comedy Meet Me in Las Vegas, though she would not act in another film for another decade. Horne continued to be a force when it came to her singing career, as seen with albums like It's Love 1955, Stormy Weather 1957. She had a hit single with her version of Love Me or Leave Me, and her live set, Lena Horne at the Waldorf Astoria, became, at the time, the biggest selling album by a woman for her label RCA. She also co-starred with Mexican actor Ricardo Montalban in a popular Broadway musical Jamaica running from 1957 to 1959. Horne credited Duke Ellington collaborator Billy Strayhorn, the esteemed songwriter and pianist, as being largely responsible for her vocal training. The two enjoyed a close friendship. Horne remained active in the civil rights movement, performing at rallies around the country on behalf of the NAACP and the National Council for Negro Women, and she participated in the 1963 March on Washington. During this era, she also released albums like Feeling Good 1965 and Lena in Hollywood 1966. In 1970 and 1971, Lena Horne's father, son, and brother died. Though she toured with Tony Bennett in 1973 and 1974 and made some television appearances, she spent several years in deep mourning and was less visible. After having been featured as a player in a 1969 screen western Death of a Gunfighter, Horne made her final film appearance in a 1978 movie, The Wiz, directed by Horne's then son-in-law Sidney Lumet. The film was a version of The Wizard of Oz that featured an entirely African-American cast, including Michael Jackson and Diana Ross. Horne played Glinda the Good Witch, singing the inspiring Believe in Yourself at the film's end. In 1981, the singer-actress made a triumphant return to Broadway with her one-woman show, Lena Horne the Lady in Her Music. The acclaimed, emotionally searing production ran on Broadway for 14 months, then toured in the United States and abroad. The show won a Drama Desk Award and a special Tony Award, as well as 2 Grammys for its soundtrack. In 1994, Horne gave one of her last concerts at New York's Supper Club. The performance was recorded and released in 1995 as An Evening with Lena Horne, Live at the Supper Club, which won a Grammy for Best Jazz Vocal Album. Though she contributed to occasional recordings after this, she largely retreated from public life. Lena Horne died of heart failure on May 9, 2010, in New York City. She was 92 years old. Looking back at the age of 80, Miss Horne said, "My identity is very clear to me now. I am a Black woman. I'm free. I no longer have to be a credit. I don't have to be a symbol to anybody. I don't have to be the first to anybody. I don't have to be an imitation of a white woman that Hollywood sort of hoped I'd become. I'm me, and I'm like nobody else." Indeed, Lena Horne was like nobody else. The incomparable, stunningly beautiful bronze Venus captivated audiences for over 6 decades. She refashioned the image of Black women on screen and brought her unique style and presence to audiences through song. Her class, sophistication, and dignity will always be remembered, breaking stereotypes and limitations to Black women in the world of entertainment. Lena Horne, the demure, elegant diva and Onyx Queen.
My Mr. Man, and I can't tell you why. There ain't no reason for me to love that man. It must be something that the angels done planned. Fish gotta swim, birds gotta fly. I gotta love one man till I die. Can't help loving that man of mine. If you believe within your heart, you'll know that no one can change the path that you must go. Believe what you feel and know you're right, because the time will come around when you say it's yours. Believe that you can go home. Believe you can float on air. Click your heels 3 times. If you believe, well then, you'll be there. Yeah, that's why I want you to believe in yourself. Yeah, right from the start, you got to believe in the magic right there in your heart. Go ahead, believe all these things, not because I told you to. No, go ahead, believe in yourself. Woo! Believe in yourself. Woo! Believe in yourself. Oh, I'm talking about yourself. Just as I believe in you.
If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.